Good evening, Wealth Our Way Nation. What is going on? It is your main man, Charles Tank Harris, the founder and chief visionary officer of the financial literacy platform Wealth Our Way, where our motto is wealth is not only for the wealthy. Can you believe it? This is our 18th episode of the Financial Power Hour. But before I get into any of that, I got to practice the attitude of gratitude and thank each and every one of you who are here with me live as we stream across the Wealth Our Way Facebook page and the Wealth Our Way Network YouTube page. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Wealth Our Way Network YouTube page. I want to give the Wealth Our Way Nation salute to all the many members of Wealth Our Way Nation who unfortunately don't get to watch the program live, but check it out pre-recorded overnight, over the weekends, wherever they can squeeze their financial literacy fix in. And last but not least, a heartfelt how are you to the good folks on the Life 101 platform who listen to the audio recording of this very here program. Drop the beat on them.
I grew up in West Philly, and times was tough. Single mom, 4 kids, there was never enough. What's a youngin' to do? Join a gang or a crew, or go to school, hit the books, and find a mentor or two? God was on my side, Mom's was not with the games, so I studied extra hard, created a lane, read books by Warren Buffett and Benjamin Graham, spent time on Wall Street, and now I'm the man. But there's still much to do, and plenty to say, so I present the Power Hour by Wealth Our Way. Enjoy the show.
Yo, that was fire. That's the first time we used the new intro. I hope you like it. I want to get that feedback from you cats. Let me know if your boy Big Tank nailed it. You know, if I didn't, let me know and I'll re-record it because you know how I do. I aim to please. Tonight, we have 2 amazing, wonderful guests on the show tonight. We have a friend, repeat offender to the show, Dr. Genevieve Dobson. She's here with us live, you know, because when I talk student loans, when I talk debt, I gotta talk Dr. Jen. That's my people. If she was the first one to step up and say, "Hey, Tank, anything you need on this topic, please make sure you reach out to your girl." And then, so you know, on the Financial Power Hour, it's a conversation. It's not a one-on-one dialogue with just 2 people. So we've been in the process over the course of the year of finding people outside of my network who make the cut of being community-driven, community-loving, community-caring people, but also powerhouses and centers of knowledge. And I got to tell you, our guest coming on tonight, Miss Tamika Ritchie, Miss Degree, wait till you meet her. Like, just you got to understand that this is a woman who found over $1 million of funding for her child. And she said, you know what, Tank, I'm not just trying to keep this knowledge for myself. I'm going to bring it to the people. So with no further ado, let's let the ladies come on today. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Hello, I am great.
I
love the intro, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Love the intro to the rap. The rap wasn't corny?
No, I love the intro. Kind of reminded me of Fresh Prince a little bit, but I love the intro.
I like it. I'm a Philly cat, so I got to always give my respect to Willie, you know, West Philly Willie, what we call him, you know, so that's what's going on. So I'm going to do this. You know, I always like to step aside, and I think, no, I'm not Steve Harvey from the Kings of Comedy. I don't know how to bring people out as well as they can introduce themselves. I think, you know, you won't steal anybody's thunder or shine. So because, Tamika, you haven't been on before, I want you to kind of pioneer yourself to the audience. Wealth Our Way is a friendly nation, and they are dying to meet you and learn more about you. So tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Tamika Ritchie. Hello, everyone. I am a CPA by trade, but for this particular platform, I'm a serial entrepreneur as well. But for this platform, I am a boy mom of 2.
Ooh.
Yes, two young men. And with my youngest, I always call him the baby bird. So with my youngest baby bird, I was able to help him gather over $1 million in scholarships and grants when he graduated high school in 2020. And since then, I've had friends and family reach out and ask, like, how did you do it? What did you do? And I have been sharing that knowledge, freely sharing that knowledge for the last year on Instagram. And I'm here this evening, hopefully to give the masses some more information as to how we can help our kids receive that post-education for free.
We love it, Tamika. We love it. I'm going to have Dr. Jen come on and refresh the audience's memory all about Dr. Jen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I own a student loan management company called Degrees of Success. I've been in the student loan industry for the last 16 years. And so my biggest role is really just after they've taken out the loans or made a lot of mistakes or just didn't know what to do. Now it's time to figure out how to pay that debt back. And so my role is figuring out the best avenues, how to get forgiveness, how to pay advantageously, how to get out of default, just how to manage things so it's not overwhelming, because a lot of people just bury their heads in the sand and try to pretend like it doesn't exist, but it does. And there's ways around it as long as you have a game plan and you know what you're doing.
I sincerely appreciate that. I think tonight's conversation is going to be so dynamic and well-rounded because of the varying expertise that both of you ladies bring to the fold. One of the things that I want to get the conversation started with, and we had a little bit of talk behind stage in the green room about let's not even worry about how we're going to pay for college yet. So we have several stages of this process. We have Dr. Jen talking about, hey, you paid for college. Part of it was with some debt. Let me make sure you get this right. We got Tamika's like, hey, look, we got to pay for college and we got different pools we can pull from. Yes, there are loans, but there are also grants. There are also scholarships. There's also mom and dad. There's also you, student. But then we have what my grandmama always said, an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. If you go into this process heady enough and thoughtful enough to make it so it's as cost efficient as possible, these latter steps become, I don't want to say less necessary because they're all equally necessary, but they become easier to navigate because you put the work in up front. What do you ladies think about that before we even get into telling the audience some of the tricks to get there? How do you feel about the way I laid that out? Because you guys are better at suited in the expertise than I am. So Tamika, I'll let you go first, and then I'll start to give parity to the selection. This will be my last favoritism for you, for the newbie, because after this question, you're no longer a rookie on the show.
I mean, that's definitely true. With the college and application process, the money process, preparation is key. Waiting until senior year is no longer the game. The way we went to school, I mean, I graduated high school in the 90s. So if there are any,
I'm 87, so I got you.
So if there are any 90s families and parents out there, you know, the way you went to school, the way you applied for school, the way you just applied to one school and you got in and magically you went, that's not the process today. Starting early is the key, and having a plan in place, even a loose plan. It doesn't have to be written in, pen and set in stone, but even just having a good idea of what you and your child, because this is definitely a family effort. It's not just all on the student. It's a family effort that's going to take you to get there, from, applying to school, from getting funded for school, for possibly not needing student loan debt, or if you do, being smart as to how much debt you take on, the plan to repay it once the educational part has ended, and then going forward from there. But everything is preparation, and early is key.
Love it. Dr. Jen?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, that's one of the things that I teach when I speak at colleges and universities, and even at high schools. When I speak at high schools, is about being proactive. Ultimately, if you don't have a plan, then it's really hard to figure out how you're going to pay back debt that you may not have had to take out in the first place. Like Tamika said, there's so many scholarships, so many grants, so many different ways of doing this, but it's harder now. So what we're seeing is that so much has changed in the family dynamic, where families in the past did have the capacity to pay for their kids to go to school in a much larger scale than we see now. Most parents cannot send their kids to school. And of course, school education tuition costs have gone up 80% since when we went to school. So there's all of these dynamics that are going on that's making it harder and harder. And that's why being even more proactive is absolutely essential to start in 10th grade. And I have people call me in 10th grade saying, okay, what steps should I be taking? And they should have been thinking about this long before that. Planning long before that with 529 plans, different savings platforms that they could put money into. But by 10th grade, they should be calling in an expert to get advice on exactly what they should be doing.
It's great that you bring that up. I attended, and shout out to my baby girl, Sydney Logan. Sydney Bean graduated from Centennial High School yesterday. Daddy's very proud of you. But I was sitting at graduation yesterday, and a woman started talking to me about, whose daughter was also graduating, talking to me about scholarships, grants. She was telling me, you got to make sure you go to the churches. You got to make sure you go, she was telling me about 100 Concerned Black Men and some of these various programs. And we're going to touch on a lot of that tonight as we speak. But one of the things, and this is very specific, so normally I talk as broad as possible because our audience is across the country and everyone has different circumstances. But I'm going to bring up this specific situation that my son has an opportunity to take advantage of, only because Dr. Jen just started talking about 10th grade and how it's never too early. So my son attends Centennial High School in Roswell, Georgia. He's an African-American, he's my child. He's an African-American boy. And one of the boosters / alums of Centennial's program many years ago, about 5-6 years ago, started a program where they provide up to $25,000 per academic term. And there's, fall and spring. So you can earn up to $200,000 for college if you have a 90 average or better and are an African-American boy on Centennial's football team. I think that's ridiculously crazy. I love it. And so when you talk about 10th grade, bump that. So I'm a business person. I'm looking at every dollar that I have to spend for my son. And I'm saying to myself, hey, you know what? Trey is going to Kumon or Huntington Learning Center or something this summer. I will spend that money today to make sure his grades are high enough through college to earn this scholarship, because I'd rather spend $6,000 or whatever these programs cost than $250,000. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the pre-investment. You touched on 529 plans. Let's just talk about how the earlier you get started with a plan, and Tamika talked about the plan could be loose, but talk about getting started with a strategy for your elementary school student, your middle schooler, or the baby that's still in your belly, Dr. Jen?
Yeah, so there's definitely a different strategy as you go along. So the minute you have kids, even my sister just had a baby and she's so adorable.
Congratulations, Auntie.
I know, right? She's so cute. But even now she's already thinking, her and her husband are already thinking like, okay, what do we need to put away? What is the expectation, a time value of money? What is the expectation of the cost of tuition in 18 years from now? So that's one aspect of it. 529 is another. And like you said, definitely pushing for their education and trying to make sure that they have the grades. I talked to a person that called me that does have a kid in 10th grade just a month ago. And they were like, okay, our daughter wants to go to Howard. And, we're going over all of these things. And one of the biggest concerns I had and I was on the phone with the mom and the dad. And my biggest concern was her grades aren't there. So that's going to be really important. To even get into some of these top schools, your grades obviously have to be at least a 3.5. But if you want to get into the top schools and get scholarships, then you really should be pushing towards a 4.0. So that's really big, because the schools like the big schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, believe it or not, they offer a ton of scholarship opportunity as long as you have the grades to back it up. So that's going to be the really big point, is making sure that the grades match what the student says they want to go to. Now, that's easier said than done. I raised a teenage boy. So it's like, oh, yeah, he's going to do great. Yeah, no. You're not going to do any of that. You're not going to do any of that. Okay, you're going to barely make it. Oh, great. And my son's really smart, but he was going through a very lazy time frame. Now he's 23, owns his own business, does his own thing. It's great, right? But college wasn't for him, and that's important to think about as well. Make sure that whatever money you're putting away, that you can take it back when they decide that they're not going to go to a traditional college, and don't discount like those trade schools. Those are big. If they want to go into plumbing, if they want to go into electrical. My brother started off working in he started off as like the stop sign guy, working in electrical, but he worked his way up. Really smart guy. Now, I mean, I'm sitting in my bedroom in my brother's house. He's got this huge 5-bedroom house. He makes tons of freaking money in that platform. So there's avenues. I don't want people to think and I'm very educated. I have a doctorate degree, but I don't want people to think that that's the only avenue. Save money in places like cash value insurance plans, somewhere that you can take that money out and you don't have to just give it to them for college, where you're not losing it, because that's important as well. But definitely being proactive. Most of my students that are planning on going to Harvard's, Yale's, Princeton's, those parents call me while they're still in high school, and we devise a plan of exactly how much we expect it's going to cost, how much they already have saved, and what kind of grant scholarships are out there for them, and then what might they potentially have to take out in loans, and what loans they should take versus the loans they shouldn't. So it's a very intense plan of action. So they know, okay, if they do this, this is what I'm going to be left with financially. So at least they have a good idea of what to do.
I love that. Tamika, what are your thoughts on the earlier the better, and what would you suggest to a person who has kids in elementary school, about to have babies? Where does the college planning start in your mind?
Definitely the earlier the better. And I would say for those families who, because the kids now know a lot earlier, I'm going to college or kind of what I'm going to do. And your children. I mean, honestly, your kids, you kind of can see the road before they even get to the road. I say 8th grade for sure, as far as college planning. And this is why. When my son graduated middle school, I will never forget, his principal, gave the speech at graduation and so forth. And the one thing she said that at the time we heard it, didn't really understand how that was going to transform later in his high school career. But she said, when you leave here, get a folder. And everything you do from now until senior year high school, put it in that folder. I don't care what it is. You receive an award, you're published in a newspaper for something, somebody pats you on the back, you're student of the week. I don't care what it is. She said, get that folder and just throw it all in that folder. And, most of us, we kind of, okay, we're here, whatever. Right. And then senior year comes and it's like, oh, these colleges, they want resumes.
Right.
They want list of your achievements over the last 4 years, not that middle school stuff now, Well, in 6th grade, he did it. They don't want that.
Yeah.
They want the last 4 high school years. And they want all of that information. Now you're sitting there trying to remember it or trying to, quantify it and trying to make it, sound really great on paper. So if you can start at least in 8th grade, that's key. But this is one piece of information that I think is critical for everyone. And when I say we need to get our kids scholarship ready, not admission ready.
Okay.
The requirements for admission, you will see 3.0, 3.2. The requirements for admission are here.
Yeah.
And then when you go to the school's website and you look at their alumni scholarships, their merit scholarships, the requirements are here. You can have a 3.0 to get admitted, but they want a 3.5 for this scholarship. They want a 3.8 if you want to go for the full rides, So we're so busy just trying to get them into the school and not trying to get them paid to enter the school. So if we start that process early on, right at the beginning of the high school career and saying, okay, these are the schools that you're kind of interested in. Some kids won't know. They won't have any idea. I say, hey, pick schools.
Right.
Honestly, just pick some state schools around you, look at the requirements and say, okay, this is what they're looking for scholarships. Because if you can meet the scholarship requirements, you've already met the admission requirements.
Yeah, I like that. And the
you've
other
already
thing,
met it. So don't look at the admission and ignore the scholarship piece, because when the time comes, you won't have enough time to get them ready.
Agreed.
And then you have to make other plans or pray or whatever to hope they get some money, and just be mindful of that. And also what I've seen this year, the class of 2022, I'm seeing some of these schools now are combining merit and need. They still call it a merit scholarship, but there's a need requirement, and they don't always tell you that there's a need requirement. Not until after the fact.
Very true. I just to cut in real quick, because I agree with you. So I have worked on the backside of granting scholarships to students for my old alma mater for my MBA, and that was one of the things that we looked for. So we looked for merit, of course, but we looked for need. So we were looking at their financial aid numbers to determine what their need was, because that's still important as well, for sure. And we also looked at how well, like, I'm really big on, like, if you're going to write to me and you're going to ask for a scholarship, I need a really good, heartfelt reason to give it to you over somebody else. And that's really important. A lot of the students I saw were writing just basic, like, oh, I want to do this, so I feel like I should get a scholarship. No. It has to be really well done. Like, why should I give it to you over somebody else? Like, what is your need? What have you gone through? How have you shown that you're excelling? And how are you going to help the rest of the world? Like, not just help yourself, but how does you getting this education benefit us?
Your community.
Right.
Exactly.
How is what are you going to do going to benefit your community, not just you and your box?
Exactly.
Agreed. And that was something when you said earlier to me, I was going to jump in there. When I went for job interviews out of the great mighty Temple University, when I went for job interviews, one of the things that I got trained on and learned at our School of Business was to research the jobs we wanted, so that when you went into an interview, you could talk about the person who founded the company. You could talk about the first person who did what you want to do, who did it to a certain level. Do you feel as though on the scholarship side of things that is equally important? If you're going for the Sarah McLaughlin math scholarship, how well do you need to know who Sarah McLaughlin is, her extended family, things that the tip, like what are some of your hacks in that area?
That's definitely a huge hack. So researching the organization that's supplying the scholarship is key. If they have a motto, if they have a slogan, read up on the organization and make sure to use what you've learned about them in your essay. Because honestly, and I've speak with quite a few families, but I tell families all the time, the money is in your essay and your resume.
Okay.
That's where the money is, because the GPA is just the initial qualifier. Do you meet at least the minimum requirements to even apply for the scholarship? Yes. Okay. But that essay, how do you stand out from everyone else? You may not be interviewing for the scholarship. You're not going to be talking to anyone in person. That essay is your way to speak to the committee. So if you show the committee that you've done the extra work to research the organization, to learn about the founder, to learn what their slogan is, find their Facebook page, find their Instagram page. What have they done lately in the community? Talk about that. Talk about, that's one of the things that I love to do as well. I saw, 2 weeks ago, you guys were, having this program, or you were doing this outside in the community. Speak to that, because committee members are regular folks.
Yes.
The scholarship committee members, they're regular folks. And they want to be impressed. They want to give you the money, but they do have a rubric that they have to follow to say, they scoring, they're saying, okay, with this essay, it's a 3, this one is a 5, this one right here, wow, they knocked it out the park.
Okay.
And they meet all this other requirements. I've talked with scholarship members who they definitely don't give money just on the GPA alone. And I think families need to recognize that, because I think we are still stuck on, if my child has a 4.0, they're guaranteed money.
Right.
And that's not the case. I've seen children with 3.2s. Personally, I'm talking personal experience here now, with B averages, not A's, B averages, receiving scholarships that most would have thought, oh, they're just going to automatically give it to the 4.825, GPA students. And it's like, no, these resumes, what these kids are doing throughout their high school careers, what they're showing in their essays, the earlier you can get started, the better. Get your kids starting to write essays now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really looking for the money, the earlier they can start writing essays, and they can start to tweak them, and they can start to make them better, and they start to do stuff over the summer, and then they come back and bring that experience and show it through the essay. All of that is going to come through when us as committee members actually read that. We're going to feel the passion. We're going to see that you are committed to your community, that you're committed to the major, maybe even that you're going for the school that you're asking us to provide you money for. We will read that through your essay. But we can tell when it's just put together.
Absolutely.
Understood.
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Jen, I have a question for you. We've talked in previous episodes about debt management and the process of getting loans. I want to talk about the types of loans. So we have parent loans, we have subsidized loans, non-subsidized loans. Can you just quickly tell us about, we have scholarships, we have grants, we have loans, we have self-pay, we have work study. Focusing on the loan section, what makes us choose one loan over another?
So that's a harder question. So let me break it down like this. So what you're looking at is, once you get past scholarships, grants, possible work study, which is based on income factors, right? Once you get to that point and you say, okay, let's say they owe another $10,000. Now the next step, the next loan that they're going to want to take out is going to be a subsidized Stafford loan.
Okay.
Now, a subsidized Stafford loan is no interest while the student is in school. It is in the student's name. That is going to be the best loan. Now, then they would take out an unsub loan after that. Now, keep in mind, though, the subsidized loans, not everybody's going to get. It's based on income. So that's an income factored loan. So that's going to be the first one you want. But if the family's making $200,000 a year, they're out. Unsubsidized is going to be your next best bet. It's still a loan in the student's name, but unfortunately, it does accrue interest the entire time. Now, during this whole COVID thing, there's no interest. But it is still one of the better loans. It still has the lower interest rate. After that, what you're looking at is you really have to compare between a Parent Plus loan and a private loan. Parent Plus loans, private loan is going to be based on credit factors, lots of credit factors. So your credit score is going to matter. If you have any delinquencies, income factors, that's going to matter to qualify for a private loan. Parent Plus loan's a little different. You do have to qualify, but your credit score doesn't matter. It's based on whether you have any serious delinquencies. So if you filed for bankruptcy, that'll pull you out. If you have small things, you can generally fight those. I fight them for my clients all the time. We'll usually go in and give a valid reason for why they had them. And we can usually get them qualified. Well, 100% of my clients have been qualified. So the Parent Plus loan, I think, is better, but here's why. So for Parent Plus loan, it's still a federal loan, which means that if we have another issue like COVID or anything that happens again, where you might be able to postpone payments or get zero interest, only federal loans are going to qualify for that. So it's better in those senses. If we do get any forgiveness, which now that Biden said yes, now the Republicans are fighting, but that's a whole nother conversation. If we do get forgiveness, those would be the loans that would have that potential. Private loans do not have any of those.
Okay.
They are backed by a private lender. But with that being said, private loans could be better as far as interest rates are concerned, because if you have excellent credit and now you could take out a 4% interest rate private loan versus 7.2% federal loan, that's a huge difference in interest. So you really have to weigh it. That's why I have every single person I talk to, every client is different. I might suggest a private loan for one client where I suggest a federal for another. It really depends on their income, their expected income, their life, their family. so many factors that make it imperative to actually contact an expert, because just by listening to me now, you would be guessing which one's better for you.
I like that. I have a question because you touched on the fact that interest accumulates. Are you saying to me that if I take out a loan first year, freshman, fall semester, that loan starts accumulating interest before I graduate college?
Right. Every second of every day,
Wow.
Till it's paid off. And this is why, like, not to go into 3 seconds into this is why student loan forgiveness is so important, because people are like, oh, well, they should pay those loans back. Many times they did. We've already paid them. They've paid them. They paid $20,000. They owe $20,000. They still owe $40,000. And you're like, how did that happen? Because there's daily interest, and then the interest actually gets added to the principal every time there's a status change. So you never stop paying them. So that's the big problem.
That's crazy. Tamika, it looked like you wanted to jump in on something there.
Oh no! I was definitely agreeing. When I talk to families and they're like, "Oh, loans, like, you know, there's an order. There's definitely an order of how you need to get the money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we definitely want subsidized before we want unsubsidized. If you don't qualify for the subsidized, okay, we're going on over to the unsubsidized. There's definitely a pecking order into how you definitely want to achieve the funds after we've exhausted all of the scholarship, grant money, you know.
And I should say, sorry to interrupt, I should say really quick, because you reminded me of something. Also, parents should be looking at, can I pay this monthly as well? Right? Because
I'll get to that. Yeah,
I had some clients that their kid went to Temple, and they and they had exhausted the unsubsidized loans and the subsidized loans that they could take out. They still owed money. Keep in mind, they couldn't qualify for Parent Plus loans or private loans because the credit was bad. The grandparent couldn't get it. The parent, the auntie couldn't get it. Nobody in the family could get it. So it meant that what had to happen is they had to take a monthly payment, which most of the lenders will do. So Sally Mae and the other companies will allow for you to do, like, before the semester starts, to start paying off per semester, which is actually not a bad idea, because at the end of it, you don't owe any student loans. You just got to struggle a little bit harder.
What would you say, Tamika, to the thought of, we talked a little bit about controlling costs by not necessarily going to the name brand 4-year university out of high school, looking at going to community college, getting all of your liberal arts / non-major courses out the way before eventually jumping into the 4-year. Because, you know, I'm going to use an analogy or a metaphor. I never remember which one is the right word to say. But when I first bought my first Rolex watch, I had a jeweler back then. Shout out to my guy, Stephen Weisley. And I wanted a brand new Rolex. And, you know, he was looking out for me. He said, Tank, you don't want a brand new Rolex. Get a certified pre-owned Rolex. The only person who's going to know when they see it on your wrist that you didn't buy it fresh out the box is you. He's like, you know, at the end of the day, they're just going to see a Rolex. And I feel that way about college degrees. I started at Kutztown University, but the degree on my wall says Temple University, because that was where I finished at and transferred my Kutztown credits in. To take it a step further, if you go to a community college and I know community colleges are, once again, way more expensive than when I got out in '87, because I could go to community college in Philadelphia for like $25 a credit. So I know that's not jumping off anymore, but community is still significantly cheaper than a 4-year university. So why would I not knock my first 60 credits out that way? What are your thoughts on that, Tamika?
So that's going to depend on the family dynamics. One, what I'm seeing a lot of is the brand name schools are kind of being pushed from the ones above, meaning the parents.
Okay.
Honestly. You know, the parents like, I went to the school and, you know, you're going to be a legacy. And, you know, the parents kind of are, you know, have been caught up too into this brand name dropping of school names and so forth. So you usually have to really get to the parents. The kids are easy. The kids kind of get it. They're like, yeah, I kind of really wanted to go to that school right away. I'm not, you know, I don't think I'm ready. Maybe I want to do this. It's kind of the parents you have to like really speak to and say, hey, at the end of the day, what matters is what school will be, like you said, on your wall and on your resume.
Yeah. I like that.
So there's more than one way to get there. So let's talk about different ways of getting there.
Exactly.
Now, this will going to community college and then progressing to a 4-year school. You have to have a plan for that as well. That's not something that you just come up with, just because now all of a sudden, well, we can't pay this bill at this school, so we just go to community college route.
Right.
You have to have a plan for that as well. A lot of the larger universities, they have transfer programs already set up. They have feeder programs already set up with a lot of the community colleges in your area.
Okay.
So if you know that and you know the major that you want to have, you can look to say, okay, this is the school I ultimately want to go to. This is the community college that's closest to me. Do you have a feeder program that feeds into this larger university? And most of the time they do.
Okay.
So that's when you sit down with the advisor and you say, okay, what classes, do I need to take to make sure they all transfer when I go to apply for the 4-year, the larger university? You're going to save costs. That first 2 years, most students' first 2 years are just, English, math, just that general education credit stuff. It's not, some kids do start in their major. I know my son started in his major courses right away. Not everyone does that. But if you have a student that's, dual enrolled, that's going to be tricky because some dual enrolled students already have the gen eds out the way.
Okay.
So they really should be looking at the 4-year colleges, to be honest, because if they go the community college route, it's kind of like, why did you do dual enrollment if you're just going to repeat, these classes all over again?
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm seeing dual enrolled students, families still saying they want their kids to be at the school for 4 years.
Right.
But they're coming in as juniors.
And
it's like, okay, well, they're a junior standing. They really can finish this out in 2 years, but you want to give them that experience for the other 2 years, and they're going to pay for it in their 40s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So, you just have to be really honest with, and I'm talking about everybody.
Yeah.
I'm seeing families that are not telling their kids how much they can afford. So the kids are writing down schools and no one is saying anything. And the kids are getting accepted. And then the financial aid award letters come in and there's a balance. And now the parent is like,
balance.
Yeah. Then it's what had happened was, and those are the conversations you do not want to have right before prom, right before graduation, right before the senior trip. Those are the conversations that need to happen early.
Right.
Early, 9th grade, 10th grade. If you haven't had it and you have a junior or rising senior, have it today. Have it over Memorial Day weekend. Have these conversations now, because if you start to set up the expectations of how much you can afford with your child, these kids get it.
Yeah.
Yes, they'll be disappointed, okay, but they'll get over it.
No doubt.
I'm still living. I know it's something I asked my mama for, and she told me no long time ago, and I was so disappointed. I don't even remember what that is today.
Right.
So they, we will ultimately get over it, and actually they will appreciate you for it because you're being honest with them today, and you're letting them know today I can only afford $500 a month. If I have to do a payment plan, this is all I can give you.
Right.
But you have to have those real conversations with them now. And going to community college, this taboo that's out there about community college and where you go to school,
Yeah. I don't understand why there's so much hate for these community colleges.
Oh my gosh, the hate is.
I teach at a community college, and I think it's just absolutely brilliant. And I started out at a community college, but I teach there, and I actually have some students that are dual enrolled. So I have Liz. She's only 17. She's still in high school. She's going to graduate high school and get her AA the same year. She's a brilliant student. But they learn, and it's a business class. So it's an intro to business class. It's like their beginner course. But they get so much out of it. It's not like they're getting less of an education. I taught them a lot. Like they were really like, whoa, this is crazy. And then now with, like you said before, in Florida, HCC, which is Hillsborough Community College, feeds into USF, University of South Florida, which is where I got my doctorate degree. So if they go to HCC, they can now transfer everything over to USF, and USF is one of the best universities in that area. So it's just a no-brainer, and you save so much money.
So much money.
And you need to figure out what it is that you actually like, because I know from undergrad, I had 3 different degree that I was going into programs before I found the one that I really was like, oh, wait, this is what I really want. So I wasted a little bit of money just like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I'm not doing that. And then here's class after class after class before I found like, okay, this is what I really love. You know, because who knows what they like at 18? Not many. So
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So
the other thing is, we talk about kids and knowing your kids. So I had a rule in my house, and this was prior to my divorce from my ex-wife. The kids were able to stay in my home until age 30, so long as they were working, owning a business, or a full-time student. You do any of those 3, you live for free. I was thinking about it. I'm a financial planner, maybe charge them rent and then divert the rent to an IRA for them behind their back. But I oftentimes in the Black community, you know, I saw a meme the other day of a dad handing a baton to his daughter who had her cap and gown on. And it said, don't have your kids starting from nothing. You know, be passing a baton that you ran down the track a little bit and are setting them up with something. So, you know, this whole notion of kick them out at 18, I never subscribed to that. I was like, hey, you know what? I have friends who are Asian. I have friends who are Indian, and they live 22 a crib and live quite nicely, coming in out in shifts or whatever. And I was like, I had a big enough house. I was like, you cats can stay down on the terrace level, come in through your own entrance, but stack your dough, like get your money right so that when you go out, you're not immediately in the rat race. Now, I say that was my plan, and I should have been the one that was looking at, man, 12 more years of sacrificing and paying light bills or whatever. You would think I would be the hard sell on that. Not one child took me up on it. Like, these kids can't wait to get their independence and freedom and get the hell away from you. And
that's true.
It's crazy. I'm looking at it economically, and they're like, I want to get out in these streets.
That's true.
One of the things that I want to touch on next is, I know from having 5 daughters graduate from high school that a lot of the colleges, now I think it's a money grab, but people say, no, it's all for the structure that they need to learn. Mandatory live on college, because you live on campus, mandatory meal plan. When you go to community, you get around all that. You know, you don't have to live on campus. You don't have to get the meal plan. You're strictly paying tuition and fees, which further compounds the saving. What is your thought on, hey, I'm going to this first year school. I have to live on campus, in-state, out of state. Talk about some of your experiences with your clients or with your own children.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Dr. go first.
Okay. So for me, I mean, the biggest thing I think is ultimately what you can afford. If you can afford for them to stay on campus and have that experience, then great. I mean, you don't want them to end up with a burden of that, though, financial burden, because what happens traditionally, most kids that go to freshman year fail out or get close to failing out. They're having so much fun. They're partying. It's the first time they've been away from their parents. They're drinking, even though they're only 18. And they don't know how to balance that. And a lot of times what we see from high school to college, even my college students, I'm like, did you guys learn how to study? You don't know how to study. I gave them, everything's going great. They're doing good on their quizzes. They're doing great on their homework. I gave them their midterm exam. They bombed it. Everybody bombed it. It was bad. Even my A students. And I was like, what have you guys been doing? What have you been doing for the last 2 months? They don't know how to study. They don't know how to balance their work. They don't know time management. And so they have a hard time actually getting those grades that they need freshman year. So it doesn't make sense to necessarily put a lot of money into that in that first couple years. And again, that's why I think going to community college makes the most sense. But even if they're going now, there are some schools that don't require that you do on campus. But like you said, a lot of them do, especially for freshman and sophomore year. And then junior and senior, you can live off campus, you can do other things. But you definitely want to take that into consideration. If they're going to be on campus, are they studious enough to actually do their work and actually pass their classes? One of my ex, his son went to a pilot school in Florida, and the pilot school, you can imagine how expensive the school was. Okay, like just imagine. And he paid cash out of pocket the first year. He got a 59%. Okay, what is it? That's like less than an F. Okay, I was like, he was gone. He was partying. He was having a great time, and he's in pilot school. I mean, come on. But it didn't make, it didn't. He needed a little more structure, like slowly, especially boys. Like, and I hate to pick on boys, but boys, we know that it takes them longer to mature. Their brains don't develop until way later than girls. They need a little bit more cushion before just pushing them out there into a 4-year college that's going to cost you $100,000.
I agree. Tamika, what are your thoughts there?
So the on-campus requirement, I do think is a money grab. I will give you the experience of my son's school. So his school, his first year, it was only required that freshmen stay on campus, just your freshman year. COVID. He was class of 2020, so he missed out on a lot of stuff. So he came in fall of 2020. And let's just say the college was not getting the money that they needed to be coming in, because it was only freshmen who was required to stay on campus,
right?
No one else. So a lot of the higher classes, sophomore and up, they were staying off campus, living off campus, so forth. And this school was building new dorms. My son has been in a new dorm every semester so far.
Wow.
So that was another piece. So not only did you have to stay on campus your first year, 9 times out of 10, you were probably going to get put into the new dorm, because the new dorm was much more expensive,
right,
than any of the other dorms. After that first year, the second year, they turned that requirement into 2 years. You have to stay on campus for the class of 2021 high school students that graduated last year.
Got it.
Because not only did they receive less money coming in from parents, from COVID, even though they did receive federal funding and, so forth, but now they're like, we just built 2 new dorms, and we're in the process of building 2 more new dorms. And the dorms are not full, because these kids after freshman year, they're going off campus.
Right.
It's too many new apartments, complexes being built. It's too much freedom outside of the campus happening for them to stay on campus. So they just made that requirement that freshmen and sophomores have to stay on campus. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to put them in the newer, more expensive dorms. And when I say more expensive, the dorm without the meal plan, the dorm is like $4,800 a semester.
Woo. So
$9,600 for a school year.
Yeah.
And that's without the meal plan. And the meal plan is definitely required.
Yeah.
And you only get to pick the more expensive ones. You can't pick the smaller dollar one. You can't pick the smaller package ones. You have to take one of the higher, price meal plans, which are like $2,800, $2,800 a semester. So, and this is an in-state school. I'm in North Carolina.
Okay.
This is an in-state school. The schools here, the state schools, they make their money off of the room and board.
Yeah.
So you have to look at colleges as a business. You have to look at them as a business. If you're thinking that they're sitting around loving on your great son or daughter and saying, oh, we're going to try to make them comfortable. We're going to try to take as little money from you as possible. This is not daycare. This is not Miss Ann's daycare. They are a business, and you have to look at where their money is coming from. And for North Carolina in-state, the majority of their money is coming from the fees they charge and the room and board. So they're going to do all they can to keep that money coming in consistently. They're not going to have a COVID affect them. They're not going to have another anything affect them. So them making those changes to where it's a has to live on campus. When I say money grab, I mean, they have budgets they have to meet. And here, the budgets are determined by a board. There's a board of trustees in North Carolina that determines budgets for each of the schools, for each of the state schools. So, the tuition has been rising, but nowhere near where the room and board has been rising.
Wow.
So you want to keep an eye on that. Like, look at these schools and don't assume that just because this year they don't require something, that's going to be the same next year.
Agreed.
It can change. And even the amount they charge can change. When I talk to families, I always tell them, do not try to scrape up enough money for that first year. Look at your costs for the entire 4 years and add a year.
Yeah.
Because most kids are not graduating in 4 years.
Yeah.
We have to be realistic with that as well. If you look at the 4-year or the 6-year rather, the 6-year graduation rates of these schools, you will see 50%.
Wow.
For a 6-year graduation rate, the average. You will see 60%. You will see some at 30%.
That was
So
one of
the
the
more
things.
we know this up front, I mean, it's real. We cannot don't assume anything when it comes to these colleges. They are a business. If you start to follow the money and start to think like them and say, ooh, if I need to make up for a deficit over here, where am I going? And follow that and just be ready for that. Be prepared for that. And COVID is not helping because these colleges have had to pay more for labor. They've had to pay more for food. They've had to pay more to keep labor on campuses. Because trust me, they have a high employee turnover rate as well. They had it before COVID and they've had it since COVID.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up. Let me just interject here. When you talk about the difference in structuring work, room and board, tuition, fees.
Yes.
If you are a out-of-state student, so I think a lot of our listeners may not know that if you're out-of-state or in-state, that doesn't matter for a room and board. Only tuition adjusts for in-state and out-of-state. So as you're saying, in the state of North Carolina, there's a board that does all of the in-state colleges, and they have a factor that goes up, inflationary or things of that nature. When you're looking at your way to pay for these things, when you're looking at your scholarships, do the scholarships at all or the grants at all take into consideration these increases from year to year, or are they normally just set numbers?
So it depends. If it's a merit scholarship from the school and the scholarship states that it's going to pay all your tuition, it's going to pay all your tuition, regardless of how much that tuition is going up. If it's a set dollar amount, if it's saying we are going to pay you 10 grand a year, that's what it's going to pay you, 10 grand a year. So be cognizant that 10 grand may cover you this year, but it may not cover you in full the following years.
That makes sense.
So I tell parents, look at the increases of the schools that your children are interested in for the whole 4 years. Go back, because trust me, everything is on the school website. Guys, like Google and the school's website is your friend. It really is. But you can look to see how much room and board and fees have been increasing every year and get you an average. Fees may be an average of 2%, room and board may be 5%. And take that calculation into account when you're looking at your numbers for the full 4 years. Don't just say, oh, well, this year is costing us 23 grand for the school. That number is not stagnant. That number is not going to stay the same throughout the entire 4 years.
Facts.
And you do need to account for that with the scholarship as well.
Okay.
If it's, like I said, if it's from the school and it says it's going to cover an item, it's going to cover that item. But if it's giving you a stated dollar amount, that's the dollar amount. It's not going to adjust for inflation or cost of living or any of that.
I want to try and squeeze two things in. See, I tell people all the time, you say a financial power hour and people think, oh, we're going to talk for an hour. But before you know it, the hour is up. So I want to try and squeeze two things in before we go. The first thing is I want to talk FAFSA. Just from the standpoint of when you have a new kid going to school, the FAFSA can be daunting. It's a lot of information. And especially if you're in a broken home, I say broken home, mom's over here, dad's over here, whose income are we using? Both of you ladies, give me 2 minutes on your best FAFSA tips. Dr. Jen, go.
So biggest thing is take your time, have taxes in front of you. And then if you do have parents in different homes, keep in mind that doesn't matter. You need both of the income from both. So that information is going to have to be submitted unless you're married, you have a step parent, there's different factors. But the key is really like just sitting down and just following step by step and making sure that you're saving all of, like my client I just worked with last week. I love him to death. He hires me every year. I do his FAFSA, I do all his documents. But every year it's like, oh, I forgot this. I don't remember where this is. I don't know where my tax documents are. But those are the things that kind of trip people up. Because if you put in the wrong information, then sometimes will get kicked back because it doesn't match whatever the IRS has. They have made it easier, I think, that it's easier than it used to be. So it's a little clearer now. Once you get through the demographic information and you plug in the school you want to go to, you literally can just upload the IRS information. And for the most part, everything else is input for you. So it's not that bad.
Love it. Tamika, what would you say about the FAFSA? Give me 2 helpful hints and tips that people can walk away with.
So FAFSA, first thing, apply in October, not the first week, because the system is going to shut down or it's going to be very slow. But after that first week in October, submit that FAFSA, right? Submit it. Just like Dr. Dobson said, have your materials ready. You can use the IRS data retrieval tool. I actually don't recommend that because they don't show you your numbers. They don't show you what they're pulling. And if you've had a special circumstance, like if you've pulled money from a 401k or something of that nature, those numbers may not come in correctly. Second tip, please, when you go or when your child goes to list the schools that they want to send that FAFSA to, the number 1 spot needs to be an in-state public school. I don't care about any of the other schools after that. In-state public schools should be the number 1 spot on that list. And there's a link on the FAFSA that actually gives you state by state their reasons why.
Perfect. In-state public school. We're going to take all that down and know. So now, as we close out, we got less than 5 minutes. I want to be able to tell people, especially on the scholarship and grant side, what is your first go-to? We talked about knowing the people you're asking for money from and doing that, but should you look for the community leader? Should you look for the church? Should you look for the Divine Nine? Like, where's the first place you tell people to look for scholarship and grant money if they're a student looking to go to college?
First place, go to the website of every high school in your area. Go to the area high school websites and look for their scholarships their counselors are putting out there.
So even if it's not your high school.
No, even if it's not your high school.
Okay.
Go to your school's website and all the other ones in your county. Guidance counselors, they get information from different organizations. It can be from anywhere. You will be surprised at the scholarships that will appear if you do that. Second, look for the community foundation in your state. Community foundations have websites where they gather, and they are the ones who organize and gather scholarships for individuals. So you can go to a community website, you go in, and they may have 200 scholarships for students across the state.
Wow.
Local scholarships, guys. I know everyone wants to go for the big national ones, but if I had to do my ranking, here go my ranking again. If I'm going for scholarships, local, statewide, then national.
I love it. Thank you. Those are gems. Dr. Jen, I know scholarships aren't necessarily your bag, but in doing the whole financial college advising, what would you say?
I got a whole list of them on my website. So So I mean, definitely people can go on my website. There's a whole bunch of links for scholarships there. I have even more. If people call me, I can supply them. And then also too, the schools that you're trying to get into, so those colleges have scholarships on their site as well. So definitely go to the school scholarships to see because a lot of alumni, like to support incoming students. So go there. There's scholarships there as well. But definitely local communities, local businesses, and big businesses as well. I mean, you can call up Starbucks in these different places and be like, hey, what scholarship do you have? Google always has them. Starbucks always has them. Nike. So there are a lot of big companies that you can go to and check out. But yeah, definitely local are probably the easier ones to get. But I always suggest that students starting to apply for those in high school. I don't know, 9th grade, start applying for them right away. So that way, and every summer, they shouldn't be just sitting on their butts. They should be applying for scholarships all summer long. They should have at least 10 to 20 scholarships applied for every single summer so that by the end of it, they have a nice chunk of them.
Yes.
Love it.
And scholarships do start before senior year.
Oh, wow.
They do start before senior year. There's actually in my bio on my Instagram page, there's a scholarship for class of 2023 students, full ride scholarships, full tuition scholarships. That's due early deadline is today, actually, I think. And then the regular deadline is like September. So they're
Okay.
giving you the summer to get ready.
Love it.
Definitely start looking for them early. Do not wait till senior year.
Exactly.
Ladies, you have blown the roof off the building. I appreciate the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge, the gems that have been dropped here. It's the Financial Power Hour. You know we were going to do it big, but they did it bigger than the big we normally do it big as. So I want to commend you guys both for showing up. Social media has been flying across the bottom of the banner. Questions have been coming in. We're going to make sure they all get answered. I want you guys to know that every other Wednesday, we're going to have key financial information to help make your life better. Tamika, Dr. Jen, thank you so both very, very much. I can't wait to have you on a future episode of the Financial Power Hour. I want to say thank you. And if we could please go with the outro.